morning. Are you alive and awake this morning? No limits this morning, right? All right. That's the title I gave the sermon today, was No Limits. Before we get started though, I want to show you a picture here. My wife and kids and I, we took Thursday and Friday, and we went down to Red Mountain Youth Camp. You guys might have heard me mention that a couple weeks ago. There's a lot of work to do down there for God and getting the camp ready for this season. And that's the project that we did. We lined up 7 great big telephone poles and got them leveled and built a deck basically for a stage down there. They're getting ready to do some really fabulous things with youth this summer. 3 of the people from the church down there that owns that camp went to the Ukraine with us last year, and were so moved by the experience they had teaching the kids in the Ukraine that they have taken the month of June to have 4 sessions of summer camp for anybody that wants to go down there. And they're building a stage specifically for exercises and disco. That's what that stage is for they were so taken back that in America we look at things so differently than they do in the Ukraine. Disco to us is just a dance party. To them it's exercise, and is a very important part of their physical well-being and spiritual happiness. And they were so moved by that, they wanted to build this stage to set the music stuff up on and everything, and so that they can have their disco in the evenings, as well as some other performances they're going to have down there. They're going to have some skits and stuff that they're doing out there as well. I encourage you all to go and help the Red Mountain Youth Camp if you can. It's a great opportunity to serve God and to serve God's people. It's wonderful. While we were sitting there hammering these huge spikes through those 2-inch boards into those huge logs, which was tearing my arm up. But while we were doing that, deer walked right up about 20, 30 feet from us and just sat there and watched us. It was just really fabulous. And we got to have a little campfire down there because there's no burn restrictions right now. And the turkey, he thought our campfire was interesting, and he decided to call to us. And we got to see him the next morning. And there's all sorts of wildlife and fun things. They will put you up for free. Of course, you have to bring your own food and your own bedding, but they'll open up the place for you to stay. And it was a lot of fun. So, okay, off the commercial for Red Mountain Youth Camp. I thought that was great, though. I encourage everybody to do that. If you brought your Bibles today, we're going to read from John 5, starting in verse 30. I can do nothing on my own. As I hear, I judge, and my judgment is just, because I seek not my own will, but the will of him who sent me. If I alone bear witness about myself, my testimony is not deemed true. There is another who bears witness about me, and I know that the testimony that he bears about me is true. You sent to John, and he has borne witness to the truth. Not that the testimony that I received from this man, but I say these things so that you may be saved. He was a burning and shining lamp, and you were willing to rejoice for a while in his light. But the testimony that I have is greater than that of John, for the works that the Father has given me to accomplish, the very works that I am doing, bear witness about me that the Father has sent me. And the Father who has sent me has himself borne witness about me. His voice you have never heard, his form you have never seen, and you do not have his word abiding in you, for you do not believe the one whom he has sent. You search the Scriptures because you think that in them you have eternal life, and it is they that bear witness about me. Yet you refuse to come to me that you may have life. I do not receive glory from people, but I know that you do not have the love of God within you. I have come in my Father's name, and you do not receive me. If another comes in his own name, you will receive him. How can you believe when you receive glory from one another and do not seek the glory that comes from the only God? Do not think that I will accuse you to the Father. There is one who accuses you, Moses, on whom you have set your hope. For if you believed Moses, you would believe me, for he wrote of me. But if you do not believe his writings, how will you believe my words?" It's one of my favorite pieces of Scripture. If you're not going to believe Moses' writings, how are you going to believe my words? I mean, Jesus is painting it out pretty simplistic right there, isn't he? He's saying, without me, there's nothing. There's nothing. You can build your hope on anything you want, but if it's not built on me, you have nothing. It's a simple, simple, simple story. Yet we like to make it so complex in our daily lives. We like to convolute things and try to look at all these different intricacies. And I know as I go through the schooling that I'm doing for my graduate program, they like to take simple things and give it $5 words, which makes them sound super smart, and no doubt they are. And I can appreciate that. But sometimes we just take the simplest ideas and we make them so complex. And sometimes we have to take these complex ideas and break them back down. See, that's what we have with the story of the big red tractor. The story of the big red tractor that we showed this morning, it's a complex story, but yet it's a very simple story. It's a simple story that we made extremely complex. And yet Christ brings it back to the simplicity. See, the big red tractor, where everyone pushes and pulls and everyone learns how, but nobody wants to take the time to learn how to write, is a story of the church. See, the church is the big red tractor, or in our case, a big red battleship, which is really, really hard to find a picture of. I guess it kind of stands out in contrast to the ocean water. But in our case, a big red battleship, if you will. I like the analogy of the tractor, and thank you, Francis Chan. I'll give him credit on the video for that. It's his story. It's a children's story. But I think he takes the very complex nature of what we do with what we call church, and he simplifies it back to what Jesus is talking about so we can understand it. See, we think we know what is the best way to move the tractor from point A to point B. We think we know what is best. Some of us might think pulling the tractor is the best way to move it. And others might think pushing the tractor is the best way to move it. And we fight between ourselves about pushing and pulling and moving this tractor. And we know because we've read in the Bible that you have to push the plow. And we've read in the Bible that you have to pull the saints through tough times. And we think push and pull and push and pull. And we're pushing on this tractor. I can't help but think of what I went through this weekend. We went down there to Red Mountain Youth Camp to build that stage. And I knew ahead of time I was going to build that stage. And I had set in my mind that we were going to build that stage. He had a lot of other projects, but I had set in my mind that we were going to build that stage. And he took us out there, he being Tom Pittman, the preacher down there. He took us out there and he showed us where the materials were. And I said, "Do you have any spikes to nail this together with?" "No." "Okay. Well, do you want me to go to the store and get some?" He says, "Well, if you guys get that far," he says, "first we got to get these logs into position. We got to get them leveled." I said, "My wife and I will have that done today." This was Thursday afternoon. "We'll have that done today." He says, "Really?" I said, "Oh, yeah." My wife is looking at me like, "You are nuts. You are absolutely nuts." But I tell you what, after pounding 230 plus nails in, and only needing to pound in a few more to lay the last couple boards, my wife said, "We really built this stage. We really did." But it wasn't easy. We fought over which was the best way. Do we pre-drill the holes? Should have. Right, Dave? I should have, huh? I sat up there and I said, we brought the drill. I had a 7/8 inch drill. We could pre-drill those holes pretty easy. I had a 4-pound sledge in my hand, and I thought, let's see how hard it is to put one of them nails in. It wasn't hard. First one never is it? Number 230 is really hard to pound in with the 4-pound sledge. But sometimes we think we have the best idea and somebody else thinks they have the best idea, and really sometimes the best idea is neither one of those. But sometimes we want to push and we want to pull and we want to push and we want to pull because we know pushing is better than pulling or pulling is better than pushing. And we fight back and forth about what is the best way to move that tractor and get that field plowed. Can't help but think that in times like that, when we're thinking of the church and we're pushing and pulling and trying to get God's church to move and to grow and to spread the word, all too often we're focused on the wrong thing. Because what we're doing is we're pushing and we're pulling God into a box, into a jar that we've made. And we say, God, we want your church to grow as long as it's inside this little box, where I can control it, where it's under my protection. I heard a story about an eldership once. I was not involved with this eldership at all. So you guys here are released from that. But I heard a story about an eldership once. They told the minister had this huge growth plan, and the church was growing and they were doing really pretty well. And this is a true story because I know the preacher who shared it with me. And his eldership came to him one day and said, we need to pull the plug on some of these programs. Some of the things that you're doing, we need to cut back a little bit. And he said, why? He said, well, the church is doing really good. We've grown from 200 up to about almost 400. He said, but we have a problem when we hit 400. I said, well, what's the problem? We have plenty of space in the building and everything. The elder said, yeah, but once we break 400, it gets really hard for us to control. What a horrible testament. I mean, who puts their faith in a God that can only limit the church to 400 people? My God's much bigger than that. My God's much bigger than that. I have to think that God sat back and went, wow, where'd you get that box? That 400 is the right number. The right number is where God says, we're done. That's the right number. But sometimes we want to put those limits on God and we want to shove him into the box and say, this is what church has to look like. It has to be red and it has to have big wheels in the back and little wheels in the front. And we have to push it or we have to pull it. But by golly, we're not going to put it in first gear because that would be frightening. Because what's after first gear? Second gear. And then it just doesn't stop from there. You have third and fourth, and it goes on and on and on. And the tractor just picks up speed, and it gets out of our control, and we can't control it. I mean, what are we going to do if we plow everybody's fields? Everybody will have food then, right? But that's what we begin to think. And we have the instruction manual, right? We were given the instruction manual to the tractor. It's right here. It's our Bibles. We got the instruction manual, and we read it, but we read it to find out if it's okay to push or if it's okay to pull. Right? And like I said, that Bible will tell you it's okay at times to push, and it's okay at times to pull. But if we read that, we'll really find out that it's okay to let Jesus sit at the wheel of the tractor and start going through the gears. It's okay to pick up pace and start really plowing fields and really start moving. But I know we get caught up in what's happening in our daily lives. And we talked about this downstairs this morning. I think one of the scariest things that we have to do every morning is wake up and go to a job. We prayed this morning and we thank God for 2 young men that have gotten jobs, that needed jobs desperately. But I still think one of the scariest things we do every morning is we wake up and we go to the job. Because it's a job. For a lot of us, our job is just that. It's a job. It's a way to make money to put food on the table. I'm not saying that's wrong. Sometimes that's the sacrifice that we have to make. For some of us, though, we've looked at it a little bit differently. We've looked at it as a career. We've set goals. We're going to attain certain things. And at certain stages of our life, we're going to be free from the stress of living on paycheck to paycheck. And we're going to have certain things in place in our lives. We're going to be able to build up for our retirement. And it's a career. But I still don't think that that's what we're supposed to be doing. And I think that's why we dread our jobs. I was talking to one of the deacons this morning about this very thing. As you grow up through life, when you hit the 20s, you think, as you're coming out of college or you're in college, around that age, you're thinking, the world is my oyster, I can conquer the whole thing. When you're in your 30s, a realization hits that you're not going to conquer much at all. And when you're in your 40s, you begin to get depressed about what you didn't conquer. And that's why we have so many young men between the ages of 20 and 40 that commit suicide in the U.S. See, we base everything on the fact that once you work really hard, once you push the tractor all over the place or pull the tractor all over the place, you're going to be successful. And when you're not successful, it really lets you down because you weren't going to have happiness until you had success. How many of us, I'll relate this to everybody I think, how many of us were told we could not have dessert until we ate our peas? Right? You had to persevere before you were going to get dessert. You had to work before you were going to have the happiness of the dessert. And that's the mentality that we have. So many young people today, they feel that they have a job or at best a career. And very few, when you talk to them, feel they have a calling. Very few of them say, I feel that I am called to the work that I do. Can you be called to be a ditch digger? I'm getting called right now. Hello? Actually, that really gives me a reminder. Hey, San, could you reach in the top of my bag and turn my phone off? Because I didn't turn it off. It could have been mine. So anyways, backing up. So when you talk to people today, there's very few that will say they've been called. But when you've been called to what you are doing, you find happiness in every step of the way. Yeah, there's pain and there's strife and there's misery, but you find happiness every step of the way. You have happiness before you have success. Success is a result of the happiness, not the other way around. So back to the big red tractor, the pushing and pulling. Sometimes we get caught up on, is the church going to grow? Is the church going to grow too big? Is the church growing fast enough? Is the church growing too fast? And we get stuck saying, well, this is the way you make the church grow. You do it this way. This is the way that we've done it for the last 50 years, and that's the way it works. But that's not necessarily true. Traditionally, we want to push and pull the tractor and not really read the manual for what it's worth. We want to skim through it. We want to pick up the highlights, the parts we want, the parts that back up pushing or pulling, but we don't want to read the parts that say, start the engine, put it in first gear. We don't want to trust the operator. We don't look at the field and go, how many people can we feed with that church? We look at the field and we go, can we produce just enough from the church to feed us? And I think it's a devastation to God. I think at that point, we limit God. We limit His abilities, we limit His vision, and we stuff Him inside that little box that we like to call church. How many times have we sat back and said, God, I did a pretty good job on this project. Your church is bound to grow now. And then it not grow. See, it wasn't about us. It's about Him. Did we do the right project? Did we plow enough field? Can we plow enough field? See the difference in those questions? I want you guys to be challenged today. I want us to walk out of these four walls today and be challenged to think about our lives and the way they're going, what's happening in our lives today. I want us to think about something. I want us to think about our daily lives. I mean, everything from when you wake up in the morning, what time does the clock say when you get up, to when you brush your teeth, to when you eat your breakfast, all the way through your day, to when you brush your teeth and you go back to bed. I want you to think about something. Ask yourself, where am I limiting God in my daily life? Where am I putting limits on Him where He has no limits? An indicator might be when you say, look at everything I did today, God. I did exactly what you wanted me to. Might be an indicator to start there and stop and ask yourself one question. Lord, how can I stop limiting you so that your potential can be released through me in this world? Like Jim said about the songs, you don't want to sing those songs and be a liar. You don't want to ask that question and not mean it. Think about that question. Where am I limiting you, God? And how can I remove those limitations so that your will can be done through me? That's a challenging question. Let's not force God into a box that we think is comfortable. Let's not limit Him to our way of understanding things. Let's not put Him into that red tractor and then just push and pull it around the field. Let's not restrict God to our speed limit. For His sake, let's stop pushing and pulling that perfectly good tractor around the field. Let's put it into gear and let it do its work. Let's let God have His own way.